Hello, everyone, and welcome to my talk entitled A Vulnerable Tale About Burnout. My name is Julia Simon. I'd like to firstly thank Women Tech Makers for having me participate in this conference. It's a huge honor. I'm usually the one in my line of work dealing with organizing the conference and picking the talks. So the fact that I'm presenting, it's a first for me, and it's a really special moment for me to be telling the story of what I've lived through over the past few years. So this burnout occurred in 2019, and I'll tell you a little bit about the contributing factors, what happened, how I was able to get out of it, and where I'm at now. So a little bit about myself. I am a Montrealer, an Anglo-Montrealer. I also speak a few other languages, including French, Spanish, German, and I've lived around the world in various locations at various times. I'm also a very proud mother of a 10-year-old boy, and I work at a company called CloudOps. I've been there for 6 years, and I was the first official woman to be hired all those years ago, and I proudly say that we're 19 women as of this week. So it's really wonderful to be able to see the growth there. I'm in the people and culture team, and I'm responsible for building, maintaining, contributing to communities around cloud computing. So that's DevOps communities as well as the Cloud Native Computing Foundation communities. So I'm very honored to be part of that group. I'm also an animal lover, and I have a cat named Flash. And I really enjoy being on my bike, both in the winter and in the summer. It's really my solo time, my place to think and to reflect, and it's really something I love doing. I do want to stress that I am not a mental health professional. The experiences that I talk about are purely my own and personal. They're not medical advice. I just wanted to add that as a caveat because I think it's important. So, the theme of the conference today is Courage to Create. I couldn't have picked a better theme for my talk. And I think for people and women in general, I think we all need a little courage. The goal of my talk today is to really share my experience, to show where courage was required, and how I was really able to create a different path for myself and a different future based on an experience of, kind of taking lemons and making lemonade. I also want to destigmatize mental health, both in the workplace as well as specifically in tech. I think it's something that a lot of people are still really unaware of, and there's not a lot of understanding around what it is, how it can affect people. So that's something that I'd really like to try to normalize a little bit more. I think people are really afraid it will affect their careers, and I'm here to say otherwise. So just to start, a quick recap of what burnout is. So it's actually been recognized by the World Health Organization as a professional phenomenon. There is stress in our lives. We always have moments of stress that are pointed, and burnout really is this prolonged stress. So even if we're doing quote unquote self-care and we're taking baths and we're doing all the things, there's still like an underlying layer of stress. So that's basically what burnout is. It's either physical or emotional, in my case, also existential. And so it's this really sort of underlying, not going anywhere, chronic fatigue. It creates negativity, cynicism, apathy, frustration, just a general annoyance with the world, wanting to disconnect with the world. In my case, it was a depression. So it's a burnout, but it took a long time to kind of get to that stage, and there were underlying symptoms of depression that I ignored for a long time. Eventually, I also wasn't able to sleep properly. It did, in terms of my professional life, it really made me feel like I was incompetent and that what I was contributing wasn't really adding value. So those are really some of the places of how it affected me. Also, our perception with work and feeling like we're contributing in a valuable way there. So the context for women. So I wanted to start with a little bit of background around, and there's no secret around how women are raised or have been raised, and hopefully these are things that will change for the next generations. But the brunt of domestic work is on women. The brunt of child rearing and, you know, children, parental obligations is on women. So we're kind of already starting at a bit of a disadvantage because we already have a full-time job. We already have two full-time jobs. So it's already, you know, kind of bringing us to a point where, you know, if we were starting at a more level playing field, maybe things would be different. But a lot of those chores and those responsibilities fall on women. And then not just we're not just expected to, you know, do all those things, but then we also have to perform at work and compete at work and advance at work. So we're really expected to do all the things and doing them all well, which is a lot of pressure. There's also a very noticeable and notable gap in recognition and pay. So recognition meaning that women's efforts and contributions are noticed, acknowledged, and allow for advancements because of the work that they're doing. Pay, I think, goes without saying that there needs to be some form of formal pay equity there. And then in terms of competition, I think my generation at least was raised to be in the workplace as if a man would be in the workplace. We are supposed to negotiate, we're supposed to compete, we're supposed to move up, we're supposed to do all of these things that are the way the men do it. And so I think that there's a lot of value in that because I've learned a lot from that. And also maybe there's a recognition that needs to happen that we're all different and we all have different needs and we all have different ways of working and approaching these topics. In addition to this kind of bulk of societal norms, you know, my burnout didn't just happen because of personal issues or because of work issues. You know, there's also an element of programming, of who we are and how we're socialized to be in the world. And for me, this was a very developed over sense of responsibility. I want to make sure things are done well. I want to get a lot of things done. I'm very productive. My self-worth and self-value is very much tied to the number of things I can check off a list and how well I'm doing it. Perfectionism as well. I'm also quite hard on myself. I was actually just came across an old report card of mine from grade 2 where the teacher actually wrote that I'm able to do all the things well and that I'm actually quite hard on myself. So I thought that was quite telling that at age 7 or 8, there was already evidence of the way I would be as a woman. So these were a lot of things that I had to deconstruct and kind of really evaluate and look at throughout this burnout experience. So there are many triggers for me. As I mentioned, it's not just a work thing or just a personal thing. It was really kind of layers of an onion and different a series of events that occurred over several years. So starting with a separation, a difficult separation from my son's father, which led me then to be a single parent. And then going back to work, and I was going back to an industry, or I was going back to work in a completely new industry, technology that I knew absolutely nothing about. So I really wanted to make sure that I was learning and that I was effective and that I could do my job properly. And eventually, as the company grew, I was the solo marketer there. So I started at CloudOps in marketing, and we wanted to do different things, and the potential of projects and things that we could do was infinite. So that eventually started to overwhelm me, and eventually the team started to grow. And then I also had an experience of grief. So my beloved dog of 13 years died a few years ago, and that was something that I was not prepared for. I was prepared for her death, but I was not prepared for the experience of grief. It's something that hit me really hard. It was the first time that I had experienced losing a being that was so close to me, and that really kind of exacerbated all the things that I was already feeling. It exacerbated that and just kind of made it worse, and made life seem a lot darker and a lot more challenging. And then again, sort of on the personal side, so those were like the environmental factors. And then on the personal side, it was really, again, who I was and how I was interacting with the world. So I really wanted people to think that I was valuable and think that my work was good. I had an overdeveloped sense of obligation as well, where whenever anyone asked me for anything, work or personal, I really I felt the immediate desire and need to say yes and to say yes for everything. So I would take many, many, many things on happily, but then realize, oh God, there's so much happening here and I can't do all this and I can do it and I should do it. So I'm just going to plow through even if I'm exhausted and I'm unhappy. I also really wanted to make sure that others thought that I was, doing a good job and that I was a valued and efficient member of the team or the family or whatever it was. So these were a lot of the things that I really had to work on and move through. But those were really the elements of what kind of sent me down the bit of a rabbit hole into depression and burnout. But I kept going because we're taught to be strong and to do all the things, and there's no time or space to kind of step back